This week's live recorded session of Arc 6. We're doing chapters 21, 22. In a moment, I'll bring my team back on, but I just wanted to remind everybody we are hosting our Arc 7 auditions on Casting Call Club as well as through our emails. So you can go through a Google Doc, look at all the characters we have available, and you can audition for them. We are keeping our auditions open till June 27th, 2025 at 3 p.m. EST. And you guys should apply, even if you're new to voice acting, even if you don't know you'll get it. Just do it, apply, and you are always welcome to join us. The video I will try to attach into the description, or I'll add it to our little feed in a moment. So if you're interested, please audition. I do apologize. I forgot to upload the podcast yesterday. My school week has been crazy busy, but we will post that, and we will have it ready very, very soon. And then we have an Arc 6 podcast coming up afterwards, and then we're all caught up, so we gotta record a few more. But without further ado, let me bring on the cast, and we are going to... I'm gonna pause my music so I don't get hit from Katakawa. And we're gonna bring on the cast and start the chapter.
Within the week,
All right,
every single audition.
We are on.
Oh.
Hello, everybody. Hello. As always, we're going to start top to bottom with introductions. Al, take us away.
Hello, everybody. I am Al. I am going to be Julius for today, and I have finally gotten rid of Connor, so I have one way out of the basement, guys. Let's go!
Damn, he's been dethroned.
All right, it's me. Hello, I am Greenie, one of the editors of Studio Reverie. And I'm here joining in for this stream again.
Yes.
Hello, I am the lovely Carmen. As always, every single week, I'm always here. Today, I will be narrating for half of Chapter 21, as well as your lovely Maylee, as always.
Yay. It's me, your girl, Kyles McGiles. I'm Amelia. I run the show, technically, sometimes. And, and Connor's away today because he's not feeling good. We let him out of the basement for a change.
What's up, gamers? It's your girl, Tealdi. I am here today.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry for that. Forgive me, fellow kids. I'm going to be narrating Chapter 22. I am also the stand-in voices for Beatrice and Ram today.
Yay!
Hello, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
I'm here to voice Subaru. I'm also a co-host of the V0 podcast. Apparently, the last one standing. The rest have left me behind. It's gonna be okay.
It's okay. There's going to be a new ReZero podcast. It's going to be everyone here.
It's just gonna be me in a padded cell. Talking about
this is your solitary
my
confinement
crackpot
room.
theories.
Okay, before we get started, I do want to see if I can actually get our proper channel open, because it makes our audio sound a little better. Our audio does sound really good. I re-listened to it yesterday, and it actually sounds phenomenal. I was really shocked. I shouldn't be shocked, but you never know how YouTube eats the sound. But I'm just seeing if we can get the really nice one. Perfect. Wait, can you guys talk again?
Hello.
Talking.
Yeah!
Hello.
What?
We're back.
We're so back.
Now I can listen to
Where's-
music in the background, which is what I really wanted.
One step
How
ahead
did I
of you.
know that's where that was going?
It's
Damn it!
easy.
How am I gonna write down every time I hear Kyle's music?
Oh my god, wait, what?
No, it'll be fine. Look, my tinnitus will not let me do this without.
That's right. It's too quiet. It's like you guys are actually in my head.
I need it.
You need
What
it
has
to
COVID
load.
done to
I'm
us?
haunting you.
All
I
right.
got Connor, you're next.
Chatters, can you hear this? And hello, by the way. I always tend to ignore you, not on purpose.
Oh, hey, Connor.
Yeah, see? He's
He's
never far
alive!
away. Thank you,
Al,
Connor.
you got one chance. Run.
Yeah.
Go while you still can, my boy.
Why did you leave a trail? They can find you now.
It was a fake peanut trail.
Oh, Maddie, thank you for being a real one and posting the notifications that I always forget. Thank you. This is why Maddie is my main mod in everything I do.
Yay.
In fact, I'm sure he asked for the thumbnail. No, he didn't. That's right. He already did. He's everywhere. Yes, loud and clear. Hello. All right, no music. Good. As long as you guys can't hear it, we are great. And I can focus. Dun, da, da, da. All right. Chapter 21. We got all of our team ready and going. We have our new voice in. And Common, do we know when we want to kind of split a chapter, or do you want to just be like, Kyle's take over?
It's I marked it down. It's in page 12.
Write it down. Write it down.
Mm-hmm. I got it highlighted.
Write that down.
Highlighted.
Oh, I
and
see it,
everything.
yeah.
It's
Oh.
pretty.
I see
pretty
it.
obvious.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. You really did narrate it. Yep. Okay. Perfect.
Holy
Love
moly.
that. That's the right amount for me. I shouldn't be too confusing as Shala, Amelia, Anna.
You know, it's a shame I'm not narrating the second half because this is thoroughly idiot-proofed. There's no way you could mess this up.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
You know me. You know what I do. Alrighty. Without further ado, our narrators, actors, we ready?
Yeah.
Alright,
Yep.
let's
Yes,
get
sir.
started.
Okay. Ugh. Arc 6, Chapter 21, The Monolith Challenge. Regarding Shala's welcoming words, while Subaru did understand that they had been directed to a different person, he decided that he would receive them without denying them in the end. There was also Beatrice's advice. There was no doubt that, in practice, allowing Shala to mistake Subaru as Flugel was rather convenient for them. With this in place, it now meant that an outcome where Shala became hostile and commenced battle would not necessarily end up in them being scattered about by her overwhelming strength. Since she was treating them favorably for now, Subaru could at least dull his hand for attack. Though, if he were to do that, considering that he lacked actual strength even under the best of circumstances, it'd probably be enough to end up as a main factor in him making a colossal blunder.
You don't need to worry, Subaru. Even if Shala realizes that you're not really her master, I'm sure she wouldn't do anything awful.
Those were Amelia's words, who seemed to have been eavesdropping on their conversation behind them. Amelia, who had her silver hair styled in a long braid, confidently assured Subaru whilst fiddling with the end of one of her braids with her fingers.
I'm glad of Amelia-tan's seal of approval. But what's the rationale behind it?
I don't fully understand what you mean by the expression, what's the rationale behind it. But Shala's a good girl, isn't she? She saved you, and us as well. So I can say that we will all get along. If we do, there shouldn't be any need to fight, right?
Right.
Her opinion was a little too optimistic, but he could say that being too pessimistic was also enough of a bad habit. Even if Shala found out the truth, it did not mean that she would become aggressive straight away. Even if the facts came to light, Shala could keep herself from coming to blows at her own judgment. So, Amelia's thoughts that they should all get along were not so misguided. At least he could allow himself to think so. The reason behind that intent was not a calculating goal, like appealing to one's emotions, but rather because he did not wish to fight her.
Don't take Amelia's rough ideas word for word, Barusu. We're in the Sage's watchtower here, and we need to challenge it to even make our way back to the sand dunes. We lose nothing by keeping our guards up as much as possible.
Jeez, you sure were quick to put it like that, Rem. You should really loosen up a little.
The result of having let down my guard was that I ended up being sent down to the underground area with Barusu and Anastasia-sama. With how delicate I am, that feeling of despair was unbearable. Perhaps that is why Emilia-sama has no clue about that.
I guess so. But surely an underground area around here shouldn't be a big deal for you, no? I don't know why, but I've been in a really good shape since coming to the Algoria sand dunes, you know?
It seemed like Amelia had replied to the sharp Ram's words in a rather relaxed manner. Amelia and Ram's relationship as master and vassal had been pretty good since a year ago. The way Ram spoke and behaved towards Amelia showed a little lack of respect. But Amelia looks like she couldn't help but be happy receiving that treatment. Amelia, who had experienced the trauma of discrimination and contempt, may have contrarily felt that Ram's words didn't contain any sort of animosity.
At any rate, Amelia-tan, what do you mean by you being in good shape?
How should I put it? The air goes well with my skin, I guess? Mana, too, has slightly different tone, and depending on the country or region you're in, so I think something like that's happening. But the mana in this place especially seems to go well with my skin, though I guess I shouldn't be very happy about that.
Well, I suppose so. But considering that this is the place where the witch is sealed, full of these witch beasts.
Amelia had clenched her fists as if she felt a surge of strength go through her. However, straight after, a bitter-looking smile appeared on her dismal-looking face. Her opinion had been an emboldened one, for sure, as she sympathized with the mood she was in. Following from what he had mentioned above, he was silently grateful that Amelia's strength had grown in this area they were in, which was chock full of danger with the witch and the witch beasts. Yet, even so, the figure which Shala had defeated remained engraved in Subaru's mind. So that was not a reason that could end up giving him some optimism.
Though the conditions have changed, unlike before where she could attack us from the tower without us being able to do anything, now that the distance is such that you can see each other's faces, Amelia-tan shouldn't end up losing against her.
What is it? What is it?
Nothing. Was just talking about how you have crazy good eyesight. You managed to hurl attacks at us from the tower with pinpoint accuracy when we were really far off, didn't you? How the hell does that work?
Oh, that's just done by linking my aim and my stingers with mana. And that makes them so it's pulled where you are. Joku no Suga Sokuku. My master's invention, you know?
I see. You didn't even have to train her, eh, Flugel?
He had gone through hell and back again thanks to that. He would probably never get a chance to talk to Flugel. But if he did get a chance, much like he had gotten at the tea party, he'd definitely be giving him some very colorful, choice words. Subaru let out a sigh as he heard the upbeat Shala humming. Then...
Sorry to interrupt in the middle of your chat, but we have arrived at our destination.
Oh?
The spiral staircase which led to the upper floors of the tower. He heard Julius's voice, positioned at the front of the group, leading them. Lifting his face up due to the knight's words, who was escorting Anastasia by the hand, he could suddenly see the ceiling from Julius's other side, standing diagonally above him.
No, it's not the ceiling, but the floor part of the floor above, I should say.
We must be on the 5th floor, Sileno, I suppose. All there is here is a door to the outside. Betty and the others first entered here, in fact.
Beatrice to his side commented that, just as they had neared the 5th floor, he nodded in agreement to her words. Subaru immediately noticed that something was out of place and said, If she was implying that, after they'd been separated, Emilia and the others had entered the tower from the 5th floor, then...
How did the dragon carriage and Guian get down to the bottom floor? I mean, there's no way that this staircase is wide enough to let a dragon carriage roll by, right?
Spreading his arms across the spiral staircase he walked up, Subaru checked its width. The width of the staircase was reasonably ample, but even so, it would not fit 2 Subarus with arms stretched out abreast. It might have been barely possible to let the huge body of a ground dragon pass down, but there was no way that the carriage part of the dragon carriage was getting through. And of course, letting the ground dragon walk down the long staircase by itself was a path which really should not be trodden, even were it to be theoretically possible.
Is there some sort of contraption like an elevator poking around here, in fact? If there is, then we need to make use of it next time. Keeping healthy is great and all, but it ain't good to always disregard modern conveniences.
Sorry, I've got no idea what you're talking about. But how the dragon carriage got down here, that is simple. Shala lifted it up and carried it down.
Pardon?
Subaru felt like he had missed something, so he asked her again. Emilia frowned at his reply, which had been spoken in English, but she was nevertheless grasped at that he seemed to have asked her to repeat herself, so she continued her words by saying,
So, Shala effortlessly lifted the dragon carriage along with the ground dragon and simply brought them down to the bottom.
No. There's no way! Wouldn't the dragon carriage weigh over a ton with how huge it is? And you said she did it as a set with the ground dragon too?
Subaru peeled his eyes open at those horrifying remarks, but no one from his companions denied it. Finally, Shola puffed out her ample chest in pride and flared out her nostrils.
It's as she said, the one who carried them down is me! Oh man, it was a piece of cake! If I'd let the lizard near the doorway, he might have ended up becoming loopy due to the miasma streaming from outside, don't you think? I was just a little worried. You can praise me now, you know?
I do feel grateful, but now that I know your slender arms aren't actually slender arms, it weirds me out. A person with superhuman strength. I imagine Reinhard wouldn't even be able to do this!
Though in Subaru's mind, the most frightfully shocking human was indisputably Reinhardt. But wouldn't it be impossible, even for him, to hold something that weighed over what one would expect to be a human's ability? Even if he could cut the world into ribbons with his sword pressure, even if he could walk on water, even if he could revive himself again, carrying a dragon carriage with one hand for him would be...
No, I guess he'd be able to do that. Oh, that just makes me feel a bit uneasy. Is that guy really human?
Despite my story, Master's thinking of someone else again. Jealousy?
In any case, he now understood how the dragon carriage had been carried to the bottommost floor. He hadn't He hadn't in actuality seen her carrying it, so the impact of the scene was diminished. But he had to take it as a new threat potential in the eventuality that the enraged Shola problem cropped up. And just as they'd finished talking about that, the group arrived on the 5th floor. Kaleno, as had been pointed out many times, was where the entrance that connected the inside to the outside of the tower was located. A huge door had been built in one place at the back of the tower, which was cylindrical in shape. It was large enough that one would need to look up at it, and its width was easily close to 10 meters. It was an unnecessarily huge door, but how much strength would it take to open it? That too was an issue.
Maybe this is some sort of trial gateway that makes it difficult to get in?
At least when I attempted pushing it, it would not budge an inch. Thanks to that, we were unable to search for you, Anastasia-sama, and the others.
As he gazed at the super huge door, Subaru let out a sigh, and Julius nodded at him. It was as heavy as it looked. It seemed like this door would stop any challengers in their path. Opening it may have been possible for Shola, who could easily carry a dragon carriage in one hand, but for the average person, it would have been impossible. Therefore, Emilia and Julius had ended up being unable to leave to search for Subaru and the others. And that looked like it had ended up worrying them a lot.
It sure does look like it's a bit creaky here and there, I suppose.
I think it's 'cause the sand wind's kind of strong. A sand wind that gets blown up by the wind must be streaming in, don't you think? When you take a bit of a deep breath, it immediately feels like the inside of your mouth's getting full of sand, and it's so darn unpleasant.
Sticking her tongue out, Anastasia traced it with her finger and cleaned some sand grains from it. Just like she had said, the inside of Subaru's mouth too felt like it had sand in it. He'd taken notice that minute grains of sand always whirled around the 5th floor that led to the outside.
The sand from the sand dunes is full of miasma. If it is not taken seriously because it is rationalized as just being a small amount, it could end up eroding your body from the inside. We should move away from here as quickly as possible so long as we have nothing to do here.
In that case, let's hop to it! My goal isn't here, but rather on the 4th floor, Alcione. Though, yet more stairs sounds exhausting.
The same old weakness. But rest assured, the staircase between the 4th and the 5th floor is way shorter than the one between the 5th and the 6th floor. If they were too far apart, even I'd get tired going back and forth. So that was taken into consideration.
Stop shaking me about! Shala, who'd spread her arms out wide inside of the sand cloud and ran about in it, was met with a karate chop from the back of her head from Meili. Looking at that scene from the corner of her eyes, the group went through the 5th floor and headed to the staircase that led up to the 4th floor. The breeze gently streamed in, and upon looking up, though his sight was clouded over in a haze of yellow by the gloomy view above, there was a ceiling that didn't look so far away. He could see the floor of the layer above, and it looked like her opinion had in fact been true, in that it wasn't too far away. And so, as they set their sights on the 4th floor alcove, whilst chatting, the group continued to march on upwards, and before long, they reached their target floor. The constitution of the 4th floor itself was too different from the 5th or 6th floor. The cylindrical constitution of the tower hadn't deviated from what it had been, and even its size hadn't changed dramatically. Nevertheless, there was still an obvious change in atmosphere. First of all, the size of the floor that went up the stairs was quite different to that of the lower floors. The circular floor had become much narrower compared to them. And that wasn't too surprising, because a circular wall had built up as a partition, like the main partition of a building, and it used the space differently compared to the lower floors, which consisted of one big floor with nothing else to them. The spiral staircase from the lower floors connected straight to the heart of the fourth floor, and a great number of doors were dotted across the wall that encircled the surroundings, indicating that there were multiple rooms on this floor.
This is the fourth floor, Alcione, that I use as my dwelling area, and the green room, which I think is what the master came here for. It's right there.
The green room?
As Subaru stood in bewilderment gazing at the fourth floor's novel appearance, Shala, standing on the floor having come out after him, pointed at one of the doors in front with an overly dramatic gesture. The doors on the fourth floor were all a normal size compared to the doorway on the fifth floor. It didn't look like they needed any special powers to open them, but there was a strange feeling floating about the door she had pointed at. Just like the name, Green Room, implied, the door was covered in countless green ivy, its state looking similar to what the unexplored region of a jungle might look like that had been left untouched for centuries.
By saying this is what you think I came here for, do you mean that Rem and Patrache are here?
I don't know their names, but the girl and the lizard are here.
You need not worry. You may rest assured that Rem and that ground dragon are inside.
For the hesitant Subaru, Shola's testimony felt like it had lacked any reliability, just a tad. Ram snorted her nose at them like she was looking down on them like idiots. Cut into the lead of the group, and headed towards the green room. She stretched out her hand over the door covered in ivy, which looked like it was made of stone, and pushed it without any hesitation. Even with how thin her arms were, the door opened readily, as if guiding open. And therefore, the green room came into view.
Aren't you coming in, Barusu?
I'm coming! I'm coming!
Subaru let go of his apprehension upon hearing Ram's question, which sounded more like a test, and moved forward, confidently entering the green room, following Ram, who'd entered ahead of him. However, straight after Ram and Subaru entered inside, the door slammed shut. Subaru turned to look behind him in surprise.
Oi! We've been split up!
There is no need to be scared. This room seems to have a limit on how many people can enter it. The proprietor of the room seems to hate it.
Ram said that about the debacle that had happened behind them, and briskly kept moving forward. Subaru scratched his head at her explanation, then immediately set out after her. The green room did not portray the bizarreness of the door. Its interior was covered in copious amounts of green. Wriggling plants stretched out just about everywhere you looked. Across the ceiling, across the walls, and the floor. Every so often, he would need to stoop down to avoid the dangling ivy that got in his way and sidestep it. And laying in the depths of this room dominated by such green ivy was
Rem and Patrache.
There was a small plant-free space at the back of the room, immersed in greenery. Green grass grew dense and thick there, and some beds had been made covered in small flowers that had taken bloom there. Rem, her sleeping face ever the same, lay on top of the bed made from vegetation and flowers. Her white cheeks had not changed in color, and neither had her sleeping face. Her chest was rising and falling with each faint breath. But then it came to proof that she was alive. Those were her only vital signs bearing the warmth she gave off. Yet even so, he felt a great sense of relief to the point that his strength fizzled out of him.
She really was safe.
I did tell you so. Or did you think that I would lie about Rem or something? What meaning would doing that have for me?
I'm saying that, but I couldn't help worrying until I saw her with my own eyes, you know. And Patrache, I'm glad that you're safe too.
Subaru gave a faint, bittersweet smile as he heard Rem's words. And then he walked further in towards where Rem was sleeping on her bed of grass, and Patrache sat crouched down. She too was lying sprawled on a bed of green, just like Rem. The situation wasn't all too different compared to when she lied down on top of her rushes in a barn. However, one thing was definitely different.
This grass is different from ordinary grass, isn't it?
Patrache nuzzled her nose against Subaru's palm, who stepped over to her to make sure she was all right. Whilst affectionately receiving his beloved dragon's response, Subaru felt a faint surge of warmth coming from the sprawled bed of greenery which Patrache was on. He cocked his head in thought.
It appears like the spirit's power can speed up the healing process.
There's a spirit here? Where?
You are a spiritual arts user and you do not know? This whole room is the spirit.
Subaru briskly looked around the room at Rem's words as he stroked Patrache. The existence of the spirit amongst the moss that grew on the walls or in the overgrown ivy was not reflected in his eyes. However, straight after she'd told him that, Subaru took notice of the overwhelming mass of mana there. His breathing and body felt at ease as if he was in an area rich in oxygen. There may have been a similar effect to that in healing mana. Even the uninjured Subaru felt like he was receiving its benefits upon relaxing himself and taking deep breaths.
I think I get it. This is the spirit for sure. Can't it talk?
Spirit here is of a different kind. Though, I guess you could easily say that there is no such thing as spirits who do not differ in some capacity. Emilia-sama's esteemed Great Spirit, and Beatrice-sama. They are special. It does not seem like the spirit over here has any sort of volition. It just attempts to cure the wounds and illnesses of anyone who enters inside. What's the matter?
It's nothing important. I just thought that sounded like a witch I know of.
Ram snorted her nose at that, as if she thought hearing the word witch was just some nonsense of his. Then she walked over to Rem's side. Following that, ivy began growing right behind her, rapidly knitting itself together until it became a green chair that propped her body up. As if it had been cognizant of the elder sister's intentions to watch over her younger sister. Ram bowed her head in consideration for the spirit and spoke, "My thanks."
My thanks.
As she let herself slump on the chair.
Whoa! Awesome!
At least, they are certainly the most gentlemanly amongst the spirits I have known up until now, don't you think? You too should follow their example just a tad, Barusu. From both this spirit and that knight, Julius.
I'd rather not from either of them.
Subaru drove both those individuals away from his head and stroked Patrache. He stroked her head and tickled underneath her chin with his palm, before slowly letting her drop her raised head.
Get some rest now. You saved me once again, and overworked yourself. There's no drawback in taking some paid leave every once in a while, you know.
Patrache curled her body up, closed her yellow eyes, and fell asleep as she heard Subaru's gentle words. She brought them all the way to the tower, and they had been able to confirm each other's safety. Just that had been plenty. Patrache's work had been plenty.
Any changes to Rem? If curing people is this room's raison d'etre, then I wonder if it can have that sort of intervention on how Rem is right now.
Sorry, but that is a slim hope. It is neither good nor bad. But there has been no progress in her treatment. It cannot cure something which is neither a wound nor an illness. Something along those lines, no?
I guess so.
Even so, it didn't look like the spirit of the green room was unwilling to take care of the still sleeping Rem. It was also devoted to Ram, who watched over the slumbering Rem.
In the end, this means nothing's changed still, doesn't it?
If we wish things to change, then we have to fulfill the aim that came up in the tower, don't you think?
The Great Library Pleiades? Its examinations. Huh?
Their original purpose had been to get in touch with the sage who was in Pallades' watchtower, borrow her sagacity that had been stipulated to be omniscient, and save Rem as well as the victims of lust and gluttony that had been left behind in Priscilla. However, Shola, the sage of Pallades' watchtower, had been one only in name, and in actuality, what they had encountered was just one weird girl who mistook Subaru as Sage Flugel. Pallades' watchtower had turned out to be the Great Library Pallades, and the book and the knowledge that had been stouted as Shola's omniscience was sleeping inside the countless books kept in libraries. Or so had been said. That was it. Their purpose had been greatly warped, and their end goal had been shifted an unpredictable direction.
I'll get a hold of this knowledge and get Rem back. I haven't wavered in that purpose.
Yeah, I hope so.
Ram cast her eyes down at Subaru, rotating his shoulders, nimbly stretching them. With that, she tenderly took a hold of the sleeping Rem's hand without glancing at Subaru. Closing one of his eyes at Ram's attitude, Subaru pointed his finger at the ceiling.
I've decided to challenge the examination above. What about you?
Don't you think it would be too much of a cause for anxiety if no one is looking after Rem? Considering that, Ram will take on that duty. Since from the start it was for watching over Rem that I embarked along on this journey, even going as far as asking such unreasonableness from Roswell-sama.
That's... well, yeah, I guess so. In that case, I'll entrust Rem to you.
I cannot really do much other than watch her, though.
You watching her over her has meaning, you know?
With that statement directed at Ram, who had unusually disparaged herself, Subaru looked over at Rem's sleeping face just before he exited the room. She was in a dream such that her facial expression had vanished, and he could not say she looked either peaceful or anguished. He stretched out his hand to her forehead, which her fringe resisted against, and gently touched it as if he were tickling her.
Well then, I'm off. I'll see you later.
Of course, she did not respond. Rem understood that he had been talking to himself as well, so she did not interject callously. Satisfied with that, Subaru turned towards the room's exit. He could not help himself from stretching out his hand to the wall, and as he touched the ivy, he asked the spirit,
Please take care of Rem and Patrache.
Lest the spirit forget. Then, just before he exited the room, he suddenly stopped in his tracks.
By the way, you'd said something like you couldn't leave Rem alone. But just now, you'd left the room empty. Why'd you bother to come downstairs? No way! Could it be that once you heard that I'd woken up, you came to see me as quickly as you could? Please let me know if something was up.
Get a move on and leave.
Huh? No! But if there's something on your mind, then won't you tell me?
Hurry up and leave.
Overwhelmed by the ghastly aura spouting up from her mouth, Subaru was rendered anything to speak anything beyond that towards her, and thus was left with no choice but to flee from the green room, crestfallen.
I never really get what Rem's thinking about, but especially as of late, I haven't understood her well.
I don't think so. Rem is surprisingly open with that sort of stuff. I find it cute that she tries to hide that open parts of hers.
It's quite rare for you to speak as if you're her elder. Though, I guess you really are her elder.
Yeah, it's a bit like I'm her big sis. I'm older than anyone else here. Oh wait.
Betty is definitely the big sis here, in fact. That's carved in stone and no one can paint over it, I suppose. You should all adore me, in fact.
As soon as he had left the green room, he returned to everyone waiting outside, which led to this conversation. Amelia looked a tad frustrated at having her seat of being the oldest of the squad taken away from her, whilst Beatrice puffed out her flat chest in satisfaction. Though, to be honest, neither of them had the big sis-like demeanors. Besides, a conversation of who was the eldest in light of their circumstances was in fact quite a delicate matter. Natsuki-kun, what's up? Do you have something you want to tell me?
Not really. Just meant to say that there's many faces here that don't match their real age and appearance.
Oh? I get told I look younger than I actually am quite often. It's a little hard for me to take them as a compliment, but I look down on being looked down on. So depending how they say it, I may accept it. Though Anastasia smiled with a strong look of business about her face, how she was really feeling was unclear. Anastasia herself was over 20 years old, but she looked about 14 or 15. However, what Subaru had said to point out that what lay on the outside, but what lay on the inside. Anastasia's body still remained hijacked by Aridna currently. If Aridna's birth had been the same as Beatrice, then it would not be difficult for her to enter into the race for the oldest. However, it would be impossible for him to reveal that what he had concealed up until now was such a trifling matter at hand. So Subaru did not say anything else. Moreover, there were other prominent candidates for the race of oldest in the present circumstances. Hey, what's up, Master? You didn't like the grassy smell of the green room? I get that. I, too, find the room nasty and dislikable.
Didn't you say there was a pungent smell coming from me too? You're cool with mine!
Master's a smell I've gotten used to. Truly, this time it's no lie.
Shut your trap!
Keeping Shala away from him, who had nestled up close to him and sniffed him, Subaru looked at the floor above. Those left on the 4th floor would challenge the examination room, bearing Ram and Rem.
What about you? Are you coming with us?
Me? Well, I don't particularly need to, but since it's been so long, I do think I want to come with you. Because it gets so lonely not being able to talk despite being perfectly able to. I've been cooped up in silence for centuries, so I want to talk and talk and talk! Subaru still couldn't act cold towards her with having said such a heart-rendering thing, and his friendly smile plastered on her face. He imagined that Amelia and Beatrice both knew that sort of loneliness all too well. His feelings towards Shala were deeply tinged with sympathy, so he didn't really have any intentions of actively keeping her away. Bailey.
Sorry, I lost where I am.
I highlighted it. Page
Thank you,
13.
thank you. I really like One-san, so I think she should come with us.
It is only natural that the examiner is present if we shall take the examination. It is just for her to accompany us to make sure that we do not commit any irregularities.
Support for that came in unexpectedly from Meili and Julius. With them having done so, it meant that the majority of them backed Shala accompanying them. Lastly, Subaru looked over at Anastasia, who hadn't made any comments about it. So, too, united their consensus. Receiving that gaze, Anastasia tilted her head and said, "Me? I don't think there's any meaning to me just opposing this here, and I ain't got any reason to oppose it in the first place, and it's not particularly a problem. Besides, that girl seems way too attached to Natsuki-kun. So if we take her with us, she may tell us stuff about the contents of the examination. She may inadvertently come to our side." I'm sorry, but I haven't got the foggiest about the contents of the examination, so I'm gonna have to let you down there.
Jeez, did you really have to say it like that?
Anastasia laughed with a "ta," and Shala looked as smug as she has been praised. It was questionable whether Anastasia's anticipations boded good fortune or bad, but for now, no one seemed to have any objections to Shala accompanying them. Although he couldn't deny that he was a little careless, leaving her alone was also an anxiety in itself. So the only difference came from leaving the danger far away or near at hand.
Okay, we shall go together. It doesn't look like we can count on you, but I have high hopes of you coming up with ideas.
He's talking to you, little ankle biter. Do your best.
You, I suppose. What were you listening to, in fact?
Shala curled her lips with the look on her face of having brought up a topic that she shouldn't have. Whilst listening to Beatrice's angry yells, the group opened the door to a room opposite the green room. And when they peered inside, they found the stairs that led up there.
We're done with spiral staircases?
The 4th floor, Alcone, and the 3rd floor, Tagita, are directly connected. I don't really go up there unless I got business, so I've rarely been there.
What's this business you refer to?
It's a young maiden's secret. Moving his gaze away from Shala as soon as she started to show signs of her inalities, Subaru directed it over at Julius. Him and the others should have already challenged the 3rd floor during his slumber. He expected that he'd be able to hear something useful out of him, but that night calmly shrugged his shoulders.
I apologize for this when you have expectations, but we understood very little about it. Immediately after you climb to the 3rd floor, you'll come across the room that is referred to as an examination, but...
But?
What lies there is an unintelligible enigma. The honest truth is that we were unable to find any clues to solve it, and we ended up having no idea what to do.
An unintelligible enigma?
Subaru shifted his attention to the top of the stairs without getting to the point of Julius's words. The floor above was dark, and he wasn't able to tell how it looked from below. However, that stillness made it look more sinister. But it doesn't look like you can just enter and see what to do. Nothing really changed, even when we went in and out. We were simply just given the cold shoulder.
Makes me so irritated when I think on how we were ignored, I suppose.
It seemed like Amelia and Beatrice also agreed with Julius's impression. In reality, although it was said to be an examination, none of them had been able to challenge it. His levels of wariness had just shot up, and the word trial closely resembled it.
Well, it can't be helped. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Then, let's go?
Yeah, that's the spirit.
That's the spirit, in fact.
That's the spirit! Receiving all three of their affirmations, each in their own manner of speaking, Subaru took the initiative to put his feet on the stairs. Then step by step, he headed towards the floor above. Unlike the spiral staircases from before, the number of steps to get to the third floor was about the same as an ordinary building. Thus, in contrast to his preparedness, Subaru stormed straight to the third floor Tagita, so much into the point that he felt he had gotten there way too quickly.
I'm in a...
Immediately after he entered, Subaru felt an overwhelming sense of unease. A clump of unease, or rather he should say that it was an expanse that invited nothing but unease. It was a white expanse. Although it must have been an extension of the tower that had up until now been cylindrical in shape, what greeted Subaru after he climbed the stairs was a strange expanse completely dyed in white in every direction. The expanse-like vastness should not have been that different in size of the tower so far, but neither its walls nor the end could be seen. In this incredibly white space, looking up above, and he could not tell where the ceiling was. Looking down at his feet, only at the part where the stairs were located was a slightly ajar black. Other than that, the floor was so white that it made him scared to walk on it. He could not tell that the floor was the floor, or he would end up being hit by an illusion that it felt like it was continuous free fall just about everywhere. The ceiling and the walls were the same. Subaru felt he would probably end up going crazy if he lost sight of the stairs that led downstairs here. And at the front of this white expanse, right in front of the stairs, there was a strange object floating up.
A stone slab?
That was the impression that slipped out from Subaru's mouth when he looked at that object. In fact, the object was such that it could only be expressed so. It was a single black slab that had been built in the shape of a quadrilateral, and had an incredibly smooth feeling to it. He couldn't call it a stone slab were it not built from stone, but he had no other way of calling it considering that its nature was not metallic as well. Were it really necessary for him to call it something else with more pizzazz, then he'd probably use the term monolith. The silent monolith had acquired a strange floating power, floating up dozens of centimeters above the floor. Or at least it should be. His eyes were thrown off completely out of whack in checking how far it was off the ground, due to the whiteness of the floor, and it became more and more unclear to him. However, the monolith floating in midair was just there, cool as a cucumber. It was roughly the same height as Subaru, and its width was about the same size as two people lined up together. If he had to put it as something in similar size, then the impression he got was something like a floating tatami.
What the heck is this strange thing?
If I were to try and put it into different words, I would say that this is the contrivance that stuck out as enigma before us.
Julius glared at the monolith, standing beside Subaru, whose awareness had been gripped by this strange spectacle. Julius's face looked sterner than usual, as if it had already been made to experience great hardship by the monolith many times over. The rest of them had now made it up to the third floor, and were huddled together in an effort to ward off the indistinct atmosphere present inside the white expanse.
This isn't a room I want to stay in, Lon.
That I agree. If we stay here too long, it is quite probable that we will lose our sense of balance. And if you end up running towards the stairs and your feet slip, I imagine your life could end up being cut short, wouldn't you think?
Yoo-hoo, Julius. Stop with the unnecessary prattle. Anastasia puffed out her cheeks in protest as Julius's prattle. It looked like she had slipped on the way back before, which was what Julius had been referring to. However, Subaru had no intention of laughing at that mishap. In actual fact, this room had been clearly made with the goal of putting someone's senses out of whack. The room seemed to embody the wickedness of nature of the person who made it.
So, what should we do about the main mystery?
You should touch that slab, in fact. The examination begins once you do, I suppose.
Should I really touch the monolith?
Monolith. That's a name that fits quite well with its mysteriousness. Let's call it that from now on.
Subaru stepped away from Julius, who was in admiration of that strangeness, and moved forward on their behalf. Since no one stopped him, he walked all the way over to the monolith. He had expected the monolith to let off a strange, ominous feeling when he approached, but it wasn't like that. It was pretty much just a plain slab of stone. Other than that, in fact, it was floating. Once he thought of it like a tatami floating about, he felt the fear he'd had first fade a little while.
Anyways, so I'll go ahead and touch it. Can I get a countdown?
Ah, right. I'd like to do it. 3, 2, 1.
So damn quick! I got you!
Amelia raised her hand and volunteered to Subaru's appeal. Then her countdown began. As she counted down, Subaru panicked and turned around to face the monolith. And then, 0. Subaru touched the monolith at the same time she counted 0. The next moment, the surface of the black slab glowed from the inside, just as it did the scene in front of his eyes. It grew and blurred. No, it was not exactly blurred. The monolith which Subaru had touched began to grow in numbers, whilst growing with a black radiance. The monolith shot out, replicated monolith after monolith from its back. All the while, its surface shined. They were all hurled across the room at incredible velocity, scattered in strange positions and all floating. Countless monoliths had been strewn out across the white expanse, and Subaru had been taken by surprise by that change. Then, passing through the awestruck Subaru's eardrums, straight to his brain a voice echoed.
Touch the brightness of the hero destroyed by Shala.
Subaru jerked his hand away from the monolith in surprise upon hearing that voice ring out so abruptly. As he staggered back, someone propped his back from behind. He turned around to look at them. There he found Julius's face. Julius touched his fringe and let his hand as he propped up Subaru with his right and said,
Well, look at this. For surprise, can I count on you sympathizing with it, I wonder?
What an arseholish thing to say!
Subaru's protest only made Julius's sardonic smile grow deeper. In any case, the examination had genuinely started now. In the great library Pleiades, the examination of third floor Tegida. Time limit, no restrictions. Number of attempts, no restrictions. Challengers, no restrictions. Examinations start. Yay!
Woo!
Pop, 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 pop.
Woo!
Huzzah!
Huzzah!
Hoda!
It's been a while since I narrated. That went way faster when you're doing that reading. It's kind of scary, huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You flub once and it's, oh, my life is over.
Yeah, there's a couple times I was like, oh, God, there's 6 words I switched. Ah!
Yeah, those two, yeah.
You kind of just keep going. No one will notice if you don't do anything about it.
Yeah, you just keep blah, 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 blah.
It's the
Just the full
confidence
send it.
factor.
Yes, it is. Hi, Gold, by the way.
Hi, Gold.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, how are you?
That was it's tough being short-staffed and having to do 15 voices. I was
You know what? I
who's
thrive
doing
in
what?
this. The audience doesn't, but I
you were
love
on
it.
You're on top of it. I gotta admit.
I think my favorite
I was
thing in the
surprised. I was
world
like,
is just
yeah.
voice acting everything because I'm a greedy asshole. Call me Anastasia.
Oh, you love voicing all these characters. Okay, cool.
It's so
cool.
fun.
That's good. That's good.
Oh, let's change this.
But yeah, you guys did
voiced
great.
the entirety of ReZero by yourself.
That's a challenge I don't want to do.
No.
I saw it happen with the
No.
early days of holographic, and that sounded like
Oh, yeah.
awfulness.
Yeah, even me and Hollow
Yeah,
just splitting
right.
the burden in half for everything we did was like I have never felt such agony in my throat before. It was not good.
Yeah, and
Overlord.
then I just randomly asked to help you, and then he said, "Okay."
Please, I beg you.
How do you even know?
Overlord
Do I
days.
remember how that happened? How did I join?
I think you reached out, and then we just kind of let you in.
That's so weird. You didn't even know who I was. You
No,
just,
I
like-
did. We had
Really?
no clue who you were, but I was like, this guy seems cool. Let's bring him in. And we just kind of did it.
While you too could be like our cast. I got dragged in
Yeah,
because I did
exactly.
an audition drunk,
And
and
then,
I had to do a recast,
Drunk?
callback.
Damn.
my
I got-
first audition.
I got dragged in by being a vocal doppelganger.
Yeah, you did. I remember hearing yours for the first time and going like, "Holy shit, she won! She got it! She's Krush." I'm not even gonna try. No casting
Oh, hi,
decision
Krush.
made.
Let's just
I was
take a
like,
listen to the competition. Never mind, I'm out.
Yeah.
Never. I was so
Yeah, it's like-
impressed. I was like, "No, I love this. Nope, that's hers."
You open casting call, it's like, all right, let's listen to everyone. Let me just get a lowdown on, everyone's takes. Let's see what I can integrate. Oh, that's just crucial. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh.
sometimes when you're looking to people's takes, you're like, let's see what people are doing, and then you see one, and you're like, never mind, I'm not gonna try for that.
Never mind, that one
It's like,
wins.
ah,
I'm
no.
out.
Whilst I sympathise with that feeling, you still audition anyway,
Still
people.
audition anyway.
Hey,
Yes,
audition!
you do.
Now my thought
We have a
process
lot
for
of
that
roles.
You have to
True.
audition group
was like, I auditioned
And
for
also
12
sometimes
others.
it's doing it. You audition, and then it's like, oh well, maybe not for this role, but we might have some other roles that we think you would fit for. And if you didn't try, you wouldn't know.
No,
Exactly.
I thought I would clock in with Anastasia. I did not expect Amelia, and also my Anastasia is shit. It doesn't sound good. It's just coverage. I am nowhere
Yeah.
near
Better than
Cassandra Lee
mine.
Morris. I would say yours is
Now
better.
Because I just
now
fully went over the top and just committed to the deep south.
Yeah, you kind of really get the draw in,
Yeah,
It's
you have to
good.
get that
Now, if you want to
cowbell.
go deeper south, you really got to start just blending everything in together until
Jesus
it's just
Christ.
one big old mess.
You
This
have to be like,
is
I think I will go for Anastasia. You're Amelia. What?
what?
Huh?
Kauragi accent.
That Karagi. Just a heads up for people, because I've been seeing these comments a lot this past week. Our whole staff is the exact same. It's just not everyone can make it to these twice a week live readings or live recordings. Either they just don't feel comfortable with it, or they just can't fit it into their schedule. So the ones that we're doing here, they're the rough draft. So what we're doing is basically getting our narrator accounted for, Subaru lines, Amelia, like all the cast that normally shows up. Any lines that Tealdi has coming up in the future, they're going to be done here. Common, same thing, Meili's done. If we make any mistakes, Common and Al have been flagging them while we've been going along, so we know exactly where to retake. And then I have Allie coming back as Anastasia. Kiki is still Betty. She has her lines coming in. We have Fate as Shala, so that will not be me. And we have, I think, Aerie is still, we're still waiting on lines from Aerie. She doesn't want to be spoiled, so I'm going to double check in with her and see how she's feeling. But it might be Connor permanently. And then everyone else is the same. Drad is our Patrache. He just can't make it to every single live. Our monolith voice, that one's not fully casted, but we're just going to be editing it anyway. So whoever has a nice booming voice, probably going to stay with Greenie, and I'm just going to edit Greenie's voice to make him sound like
You give
all
reverb.
encompassing. So yeah.
Okay, so I was practicing while listening, and all I could think of is what sounds fitting. So I thought, oh, that Baldur's Gate, when you're customizing your characters and stuff.
Who are you?
I was trying to edit that a bit.
It was yes. Channel that. That's perfect. I can edit that.
Mhm.
Make it nice and boomy. Who are you?
Who are you?
Amazing. So yes, that's our
Thank you,
TLDR.
Always great.
But yes, everybody, we do have the auditions up. I'm sure they already talked about this, but yeah, it's good. If you ever want to audition for any of the characters, we have that going on, and of course, it's open to everybody. Everybody, in fact.
Yes.
I suppose, in fact.
I will post
And we'll probably...
the video again for you guys. We're gonna make little commercials over the next few weeks too.
Yes, as I say, we're going to be advertising it a bit more broadly in the coming days. We just want everybody in our community to get a look at it first.
Waiting on the paycheck to pay for the ads.
Yes, exactly.
Then we will
Guys,
post
you
them.
have to audition for Groovy. Groovy. You
Yeah,
have to
everyone
audition
has
for
to
him.
audition
You gotta
for
go.
Groovy.
Go do it. You gotta do it. You have
Groovy
to do it.
Gumlet.
That was such a fun one. Here we go.
It's
Arc
liberating.
7. Yeah, I had a great time. Mine's trash, but I loved it.
I love Cursor.
Oh,
It's
don't
so
worry.
much
Bigger
fun.
trash is incoming.
Full said it.
Challenge accepted.
Bow, bow, bow. I'm running to the washroom, and then
Thank you, Jack of Trades, for the gift membership, everybody. When we
Yes.
are doing more podcast episodes, we'll have a lot of things in the backlog that you guys can see first. And when we're editing the Arc 6 chapters, we'll also put those out first for members. So
Hi.
if you want to be a member, also, yeah, with upcoming, because you guys funded the Lustiff, we will put that out first for members as well. So,
Yes,
yeah.
once all of our team members are better again, we'll start writing.
And also when we have more female voices, so that it's not the same person doing everything.
Yes. We got. Also, thank you, Mordinator, for the $5 buckaroonies. Thank you, Hydrolix. Anything counts, so thank you very much. And thank you, Jack of all Trades, for the membership. Appreciate y'all for that. Yeah, feel free
Very
to
generous.
chat for a moment or two. I'm running away. I'll be right back.
Ole mole.
Yes.
What did y'all thought of the chapter?
We're getting
I love
tested.
it.
Yay, test.
Yeah, imagine you get isekai'd and then your first thing that you have to do is just take a test. All right, calculus 2.
I
Let's
thought
go.
I was free from these responsibilities, along with taxes.
best.
Wait,
I
you
mean,
mean
this
you
obviously-
didn't study?
Yeah.
Mm.
Obviously,
Like,
probably
oh.
not going to be algebra. What do you guys think it's going to be? People who don't know.
It's going to be something
Maybe.
that they don't know because it seems like they've been struggling against it while Subaru's been unconscious. Julius has a particular anger towards this monolith thing.
Ignored me. I angry.
I
It is true.
lost.
I watched. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think this is kind of a nice parallel between Arc 4 a bit. Don't you guys think? The idea of a trial, you know.
Yeah.
Yep. The
Um,
trials.
So more of that. It gives you the same feel. You know, Arc 5 felt very different from Arc 4. Now Arc 4 is coming back a little bit thematically here, it seems. In tone, at least, so far.
We're getting a
I
bit
mean,
of a
of course, there's a lot of
callback.
horror moments. Yeah, there's been a lot of horror moments leading up to this. A lot of mystery building.
A lot of spooky mar beasts.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah,
now that
I'm
we're
fairly
here,
certain.
kind of safe, we still have stuff to overcome.
I'm
A lot
fairly
lower
certain that
stakes,
Kina's
though.
probably
We can
in-
challenge it as many times as we want, with as many people as we want, and with no time limit.
Yeah, and you don't come out crying each time. Instead, you just get
Yeah.
frustrated.
You're stumped. Yeah.
Now, for a character like Julius,
He
that's
didn't
probably
know,
more
right?
frustrating, honestly. He's like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
give a fuck about my past. I just want to get past this fucking exam. Let me get into the library with books. I like reading.
I love books. I love
Yeah.
books.
I need to read the books. Yeah. I mean,
And then it's like, oh, it was ignoring us before. It wouldn't do anything. And then Subaru shows up. It's like, oh, hey, here's everything. And Julius
Yeah.
is like, you motherfucker.
It was good.
So you're the main character, huh?
Yeah, exactly. They like you better, I guess. Yeah. Does seem like Shala is favoring Subaru.
Mhm.
More so
a
than
little
I do.
bit.
I
Yeah.
guess
Just a
A
twit.
little bit.
the question here is though, what's this test for? Like it's ultimately to conquer the tower, but for what reason does that exist?
Funnily enough, I was theorizing that like last night. The two things that we thought of were just like, well, for this first part, were to bar access to something around the tower, or to gain access to something at top of the tower that they just don't know about,
Mm-hmm.
and that they might not even know about even after conquering it, because who knows what's gonna happen, right?
Yeah, usually trials seem to be. I mean, like the trials that we know were very spiritual in nature, right? I wouldn't be surprised if it's not
Yeah.
like you get a prize. It's more like you unlock something spiritual, like something that's been there, or like something that's sealed, I should say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It could be something like that, though. It does seem a little strange. It might be even like when you do trials like this, you might get a favor or a wish or like a audience with something. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I
Like an
think about it, I
entrance
think like
exam.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Because you also have
It's
to think about
interesting.
like the average person coming here. They're not gonna be, all friendly with Shala probably because she just tried to obliterate them. So, like, what would be the actual circumstance for an average person coming through to the tower and making it to the tower?
Is there
It's
even
just kinda cheating.
one, to be fair? Like an average
Yeah,
circumstance?
was that even intended at all? Like, was it
Yeah.
Or it's to keep
intended to
away.
really just
Yeah.
I
gatekeep
mean,
everyone
it seems
else?
like people are not supposed to be here unless you're an exceptional person, right?
Yeah,
Like
you have to be
Yeah.
the full package. Like
Yeah.
strong to get
It-
by the attacks on the way there, but then smart to figure out the stuff inside.
Which
And
Yeah, be
honestly, I
worthy.
think it's probably just like, this might literally just be to gatekeep everyone except for like Flugel. Because first of all, the first
Yeah.
checkpoint is that you have to get past Shala, right? And unless you know exactly what she is and like how she hits you, you're probably cooked like immediately, or you're just Reinhardt. And then you have this, and you have a bunch of examinations that apparently Julius can't solve, and he's like John History. So it might just be barring access for everyone except for one person, and you just have a bunch of countermeasures in place for that one person.
in that case, then would it almost be like a test to prove to be a person, like to not even directly like be someone
okay,
named,
so
but
you're
be a
getting what I'm
thing,
thinking
like
of.
be a role.
Yeah. To be a human, essentially, yeah.
Oh no, it's the worst.
Yeah.
Prove you're human. How many buses do you see?
Oh no, it's a capture.
I see it as like, you know the whole like theory about gathering all the authorities to become a human, right? I see this more as like a first like essentially an examination to see if you have, and then allow you access to something else that comes up later.
I think
Yeah, I think
it's not necessarily to be human, but to be like a balanced human. Maybe is the better way.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
understanding that, like
Yeah.
being someone who has the wisdom to and the emotional intelligence to understand that how their emotions are like and balance themselves as a person who can live through sin and not condemn themselves or others, basically.
Yeah. It's so hard to like jump around not saying stuff that comes up later.
yeah, but it is true that like, I honestly think that the idea of this trial trying to prove you like your character seems kind of likely, right? Considering
Yeah.
what we know about what they are expecting or what Shaw is expecting.
We're getting a lot of focus in the narration, in Subaru's thoughts, and in his dialogue that he really dislikes the person that set up these trials. Like, he has a very poor opinion of Flugel. He could just tell from how this has all been set up, he is a terrible person.
Yeah.
Which speaks a lot to his character. So it's very interesting to, like, are these going to be very cruel and sadistic trials, perhaps? Like, very similar to how, for in Arc 4, Subaru's second trial just completely like locks him out from going further because of how traumatizing it is to relive those alternate worlds.
Yeah, different trials seem to have different weight on different people. I wonder if one person's going to be doing this trial, or if everyone, like they said, is going to be trying different parts of the trial.
Yeah, like it responds in equal measure to the strength of the person or the skills of the person that activates the trial.
Yeah. Does it one person need to do all the trials, or can anybody do one
almost
part
Is
of it?
this a
Yeah.
team building exercise?
Yeah, like
Yeah, it could be. 'Cause that's what it feels like, right? Everybody's here, and there's been a lot of tension, but like now they have to all together overcome their own demons, as it were.
it,
Is my guess.
it's also interesting too because that adds an element of saying, and this is, I think, also very true to the heart of ReZero as a story, that Subaru can't solve everything by himself. And that is especially proven in Arc 4, where the whole point is that he's not supposed to complete the trials himself. So that then adds the idea, I think, that it's probably not supposed to be Subaru beats all of these flawlessly by himself, right?
Yeah. He's not really the main character if you think about it.
He's the main character on a technicality.
Asterisk.
Yeah.
Hi hi.
Point of view character does not make main character.
True.
Truly. I mean, there was a post the other day about Subaru being the magical girlfriend to Amelia, if you know that trope.
You know what? That's kind of fair.
Honestly, that is kind of fair,
it's like,
yeah.
It makes sense.
Everyone
hated her.
There's like
but
equal.
you know that one guy who came in.
Yeah, there's like equal like weight to Amelia's role in the story to Subaru's role in the story, of course. Like where they're positioned, I should say. So like it makes sense that you could see either of them as technically the main character of the world. Though obviously, Subaru is, there's a lot of weight to him. Yeah. He's the viewer's main character. You know what I mean? At least.
Yeah, he's not the main character of the world because that would be like Reinhard or Amelia. But
yeah, we kind of can't get Reinhard's POV because that's a spoiler, apparently. Thanks, Tappe.
just being the like outsider makes him the main character, right? Like that's the idea. He's the outsider. That's sort of the point that he kind of fits in the story. But a lot of people are still substantial. I think that's a testament to Teppe's writing, that he's like, well, really, other people are just as important as Subaru, and he kind of lets you know that very clearly.
Yeah, and the way he writes Subaru in particular as well is that Subaru typically never has more information than the audience does. The audience will typically be the one that has more information than he does, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So it adds that element of Subaru is the lens of which we see all of this from, because from a story writing perspective, that's how you learn, right? But
yeah, you need the audience stand in to be like, hey, this person doesn't know anything. Let's exposition dump, get everything out.
But Teppe also knows that doesn't, like, that is not antithesis to making a good character who has their own personality and desires and can be an active player in the story.
Exactly. I mean, he's one of the most important players, right? And there's no way he's able to see everything that we. Because I'm imagining, like, if you did have Subaru know everything that we knew, like, how. I'm imagining Subaru now knowing every single named chapter. Where they just gives everyone a backstory cut away. Yeah, no, that doesn't work.
Even the history and like the EX novel and stuff like that obviously he doesn't know. It's like those are all important side bits. Like every side story, every interlude, every whatever, all that stuff for us, right? Like I guess usually Subaru is the point of view character in the main story. So like most of the stuff that we read in the main story is stuff that Subaru knows. But that's not always the case, and almost never the case for the side stories.
Yeah, it's very much a debuff. Like if Subaru had a lot of this information that the general reading audience did, he would be in a lot better of a place, I think.
Yeah, especially since a lot of like the side stories in EX novels, or not EX novels, but a lot of the side stories happen like concurrently in a different region at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, side stories usually
Bro
do,
cannot
yeah.
be omniscient.
But yeah, I think that's a nice way to tell a story, and I'm glad that he does that, because, you know, Subaru is not the smartest person. We can't feel like, you know, he's learning stuff before we
Yeah, he's
do,
not.
you know.
It's really not.
Subaru
He's not
is...
dumb, he's just not he's not, like, finding things out like Sherlock Holmes, you know.
Yeah. Like, Subaru isn't a genius, but he's quick on his feet. And Return by Death has forced
And he
him
has
to
a
be
very
that.
weird skill set.
Yeah, he has a
Just
very
weird
specific,
set of
very
skills.
specific skills.
Yeah. Like the one that's going to be coming in this upcoming examination, maybe?
Question mark?
Perfect timing to transition
Yay.
over to that.
Yeah.
All right.
Tail, are you ready
Flawless
to narrate?
transition. Yes.
Yay, our whole cast is here and ready.
Hola.
At least there's no more Ram to do. Yay!
Yay! I
Because
gave
Ram
you guys
just-
some time to drink some water.
She literally just excused herself, like, yeah, I'm out.
Peace.
funny.
Alrighty. When you're ready, Tail, you take us away.
All right. Arc 6, Chapter 22, The Asterism of the White Starry Sky. After he entangled himself from Julius and stood unaided, he turned to face the examination. In front of Subaru's eyes, the figures of countless replica monoliths had spread out across the white expanse, with the monolith he touched as the center. To be honest, there were so many of them that he would get sick and tired were he to count them.
This would be the examination you meant, right, Shawla?
Looks like it, right? I want to see Master flaunt his forte.
Don't start saying stuff like a band would at a drinking party.
He would not know since he had never been to one, but that was probably how things went there. Subaru looked around the room behind Shala, who had cheered him on with her easygoing manner. The floor was still enveloped in white, with everything from their ability to tell distance to their ability to tell height going haywire. The only change that stood out were the monoliths dotted about the place, but those two were not particularly different from the first one. There seemed to be a bit of a difference in size between them, but other than that, they were the same in that they all floated in midair and were made of a strange material.
Speaking of other stuff that we were given as a clue, still, that thing from before.
What he recalled was the voice that had echoed inside his brain upon touching the monolith.
Touch the brightest of the hero destroyed by Shala.
The sound had not come through his eardrums, but rather it had been whispered straight to his brain inside his skull. Closer to that. The voice he had heard was no sound, for the general concept of it being someone's voice could not be applied here. If he were to put it in other words, it was like the words had been jammed into his brain like a sentence that he had thought of. There was no sound in his thoughts. Thus, who the voice belonged to was incomprehensible. If anything, it was his own.
That voice which could be heard was the examination's question, you reckon? If that's the case...
Subaru, I apologize for interrupting while you were pondering, but there are a few important things I have to say. I do not think it would hurt to only go ahead after hearing those.
The practical joker from before, Julius, sent those words Subaru's way while the latter was racking his mind. Near the stairs which led downwards, Emilia and the rest of them were circled around the monolith, standing still. Every one of them looked puzzled. Subaru shrugged his shoulders in appreciation of Julius, who was beckoning them to his side, and with an,
"Oh? Is that so? All of you challenged it before whilst I was sleeping. Did you make any progress?"
I guess I cannot really dub it progress. Anyways, Subaru, please try and touch the stone slab. I mean, the monolith right here.
Does doing this please you that much? Well, Sure, whatever.
Subaru narrowed his eyes at Julius, who had stuck to referring to it as a monolith, and walked over to the monolith on his right-hand side. The slab was one of the replicas of the original monolith. As he got closer, he could see that this one was just a little smaller than the original.
What if it's a trap, where the moment I touch it, my arm gets swallowed up?
In fact, if something like that happened, Betty would become your right arm for the rest of your life, I suppose.
Then I'd become Subaru's left hand. You can rest assured.
Both of my arms would be gone if we suppose that, though!
Thanks to Beatrice and Amelia's reassuring pledges, Subaru summoned his courage and stretched his hand out towards the monolith. The act of touching it in itself was not something that worried him. So long as his companions had recommended him to do this, and did not attempt to stop him, he had no reason to doubt his safety. The issue was simply the chance that they were concealing the truth, as with the monolith's self-replication.
Oh?
Still full of anxiety, as soon as his fingertips brushed against the monolith, the black stone slab shone so brightly that it almost scorched his eyes. In fact, its radiance had caused Subaru to hold his breath and immediately cover his face with his arm. Then, after the light faded away, what remained in front of Subaru's eyes was...
Huh? Where did the monolith go?
Behind you, Master!
Behind me?
After that flash of light, Subaru confirmed that the monolith that should have been in front of him had disappeared. Surprised by what had happened, he turned to look behind him at Shala, who had nonsensically shouted out in triumph. When he turned around, in front of the stairs, in other words, at the place where the original monolith had stood, the first monolith stood alone. The rest of them had disappeared from the room entirely.
So, in other words, this means...
that everything went back to its original state. To put it shortly, it looks like the examination...
Stepping away from the dejected Subaru's side, Julius carelessly approached the original monolith. And then, immediately after he stretched out his hand and touched its surface, that voice echoed out through his mind.
Touch the brightest of the hero destroyed by Shala.
Once again, in sync with the challenge posed to them, monolith after monolith were replicated from the original and scattered all around the room with the same momentum as before. The examination was distributed around therefrom. In other words, they could call this a retry.
I see. It must mean we can think as much as we want until we find an answer.
Al, is your mic dead?
That is our guess right now. There happens to be this monolith. But I can say that even when we went around touching monoliths at random, we were unable to find an answer.
Ah, so you've already tried brute forcing it?
Subaru broke down Julius's mild manner of speaking to the bread and bones of it. Emilia and Maylie, who had heard that explanation, were patting their heads with what seemed to be a look of embarrassment about them. Just attempting to touch and check single one of them, certainly it looked like they had tried to carry out that tactic. Nevertheless, it did not seem that it had done the trick.
It is an examination after all. It means we have to solve the problem and answer it.
It does look like our examiner does not appreciate answers given out at random.
Yeah, seems so. So, like a sensei who doesn't give you credit unless you write down all your formulas, and doesn't allow you to just put the answers in the test answer column. The anti-cheating measures sure do appear quickly, though.
Reaching an answer without showing how it had been derived could only come as a result of cheating or a hunch. Oftentimes, till primary school, He would come across problems which he would find answers to using his hunches. But the main point of mathematics was to learn how to derive the problem, not to regurgitate the problem willy-nilly on the spot. One time during primary school, he had been marked down for the lack of clarity in his working out. He remembered how resentful he'd been about it, but...
After all this time, it looks like my sensei was right.
I'm sorry to butt in when you're still absorbed in your thoughts, Natsuki-kun. But rather, your turn and ain't from here. Come on, snap back to reality. Snap back.
Huh? My bad. But what do you mean by my turn?
Anastasia beckoned Subaru, his eyes glazed over, back to the real world, and then clapped her hand on his back. As Subaru tilted his head at her appeal, everyone looked around at each other and broke into mutters. What they were saying was the same thing, so combining it and paraphrasing it into other words, it's down to Subaru to find out who the hero destroyed by Shala is.
We challenged the examinations many times over until Subaru woke up. However, that girl wouldn't even tell us whether or not she was Shala when we did.
Betty and the others were concerned. Shala was the sage, in fact. We thought they were the person on the drawing engraved on the silver coin, so we didn't connect this woman with Shala, I suppose. Those were Amelia and Beatrice's replies, both of whom had not been able to hear Shala's story until then. Ever since Subaru had woken up, he had seen Shala communicate with him with an air of over-familiarity that was way off the marks of typical friendliness. And because of that, it was hard to believe for him that she had refused to say anything to them. However, her not telling them anything more could not be helped, since she had kept her mouth shut towards those in the tower. Having said that, though, Subaru was still worried. Even if Shala had had her tongue unsealed since then, and had become able to talk about that.
I guess it doesn't hurt to ask. Hey, Shala! If you know anything, please tell me everything about the hero you destroyed.
Leave this to me. Remembering stuff like each of the names of the guys I've killed is second-class work. For a first-class individual like me, I don't remember past the 100 mark.
Of course you'd say that!
Shala gave him a thumbs up and then winked. Receiving that vigorous response, Subaru slapped his knee. Just as he had expected and feared, her reply was an airheaded Shala-like one. He had suspected that was likely going to happen with how she had acted and talked till now. There was the chance that she, who would seemingly know the answer to the hero that Shala destroyed, did not remember it anywhere in her head.
However, we shall not make any progress if we end it with that. Miss Shala, do you really not remember anything? Even if it is a little tiny detail, it does not matter.
That's easier said than done. Jigoku no Shogeki everyone who comes near the tower, and their corpses end up being cleaned up by the witch beasts outside. Okay, but isn't it strange? Could it be an examination to see whether we can reveal the tower's knowledge in the first place? It'd be a strange sequence of events for it to require us showing something that happened after Shalasan's tenure and protecting the tower started.
Shala pouted, saying she had no clue whatsoever, but Anastasia evidenced the out-of-place feeling in what she had stated. Everyone other than Shala agreed with her opinion with an, I see. For sure, it was difficult to imagine that the problem posed inside the tower came about after her tenure in the tower had started. Then, naturally, that meant the period of time in which Shala had destroyed the hero came before the tower's construction. In other words, that means it's from before you started firing at people at random, in fact. Come on, remember, I suppose. It's like all of your nourishment ended up just in your buttocks and breasts, so your memory has become poor, in fact.
This appearance is chosen by my mother. But, even if you say remember, it's not gonna come out. Honestly, before the tower was built, right? Yeah, that's right. Before the tower was built, during that time, do you happen to know anyone that you destroyed?
In the stairway with Shala as the center, they desperately tried to jog her memories. However, Shala, basking in everyone's expectations, gave no signs that they had been successful, and she groaned with a
Is it true or not that you've been around since 400 years ago? If I name a bunch of the noteworthy people around that time, you wouldn't happen to have killed 2 or 3 of them, would you?
Master, are you thinking that about me? I'm a maiden who likes to dabble in flowers, you know.
That's no maiden. Ugh, more like a caterpillar.
Subaru, I think your way of speaking just now was ever so rude. If she doesn't want to remember, then don't push her and force her to.
Amelia-tan, your kindness is your super virtue, your best feature. But this woman is the type where the more you pamper her, the more useless she becomes. Don't you think? I can tell, because I'm the same!
Amelia had firmly puffed out her chest and declared that. But it was not that Shala was unable to remember because she wished not to in the first place, but rather that her memory was so poor that she just was incapable of doing so. The topic was one which he wanted to handle delicately, since one of his members had a bunch of difficult problems in regards to memories, but it was a different matter when it came to Shala.
Practically, it'd be no problem if I fire off some random names, right? I don't know how one of them striking the answer would react with the monoliths, though.
It's definitely gotta be as Natsuki-kun says. I wonder, though, even if we found out the answer, how could we then touch the brightest?
Considering that the monolith he touched had disappeared, and the examination seemed to have adjudicated them as having messed up, he could predict that their answer's final form would probably be to touch the correct monolith. The issue then was how they would find the correct monolith. He did not get the feeling like it would become clear even if they chipped away at Shala's memories, one could say.
But even if we think forever, we won't make any progress, right? Since Naked One-sama is pretty cooperative, I think we might as well ask her.
Holding onto Shala's bare shoulders, Meili butted in between the adults who were stumbling over what to do. She looked at the group of monoliths with a look of boredom on her face as she fiddled about with Shala's scorpion tail.
There's no witch beasts around. There's no progress. And it's really not fun here. Speed things up. I want to go back to the mansion.
Everyone was at a loss for words at the words which Meili had uttered. Following straight after that, Meili said,
What is it?
As Subaru patted her head.
What is it, I wonder?
Nothing. I just think it's as you say. You're right. This place is sandy as hell, and on top of that, there's a bunch of scary witch beasts prowling about outside. We'll quickly take care of things here, settle all of our problems. Wake up Rem, retrieve a means to save the people in need, and then we shall skedaddle the hell out of here.
Treading around things with anxiety before attempting them was a waste of valuable time. It felt to him like the examination had been set up by someone rather ill-natured, and that he was playing right into their hands.
Master, you do know that there's an easy-to-stroke head right next to that little ankle biter.
I said this already. You're the same as me, in that which you're the type, when you're pampered, falls too much, you fall unendingly into corruption. That's why, from here on out, we're doing this the Spartan way. Hurry the hell up, and remember!
Do I have to?
Puffing her cheeks out in dissatisfaction, Shala seemed to be in full pout. However, she would be easy to handle, since after a few dozen seconds she would start humming with a face like she'd forgotten.
Well then, a young lady requested too. Shall we try and get on with the testing out of the possibilities that we have in front of us without dithering about?
That's probably a good idea. It's relieving that it's okay even if we fail a bunch of times. In most cases in life, Things are decided in just a single bout. So this is quite a generous problem, don't you think?
Although Maylie had set things off in motion, Julius and Anastasia had also come into agreement with her. Thus, it was time to make her remember the hero destroyed and forgotten by Shala once again.
For now, let's go with a name you remember. Yeah! How about Reed? That dude was the first Sword Saint. You killed him, didn't you? Third base, clean up!
Straight after he'd nonchalantly pulled out that name, Shala let out a high-pitched shriek and leapt backwards. Subaru performed a diving catch on Maylie, who had been dropped, unable to withstand that injection of momentum. After he safely brought Maylie back to ground, Shala, who had jumped up and fled far away into the room, had gotten smaller in view.
Hey! I'm sorry! I don't really know why you're acting like that, but get back here!
Please don't say such serious stuff! Master's a real mean guy, the absolute worst. Maiden's distress and liability issue!
Even though she spoke frivolously, Shala's voice as she skulked back was shaking feebly. She sure did act tough, but she was not all that. Unmistakably, fear and dread had caused her to react like that. Naturally, the reason behind her fear could only be but one.
Huh? Was the first Sword Saint such a scary person?
How foolish. Reinhard Wilhelmsama and such are esteemed individuals worthy of the forefather of the Astrea family. He was definitely not just skilled with a sword, but a man of character as well. Certainly, there are some parts sprinkled into the anecdotes left behind as rumors that indicate that he was rather strong-willed, which do not overlap with Reinhard and the rest, but if it is truly not like such, then would that not mean that the history of the Astrea family has been twisted to the current generation?
Not really, but when you unravel history, the viewpoint of prominent statesmen also changes, and you'll find that Japanese history is sufficiently cruel too. If we compare it to that, then we can't really start speaking about dogmas here.
Dear goodness, let's not delve into this sort of talk. It is all right. We can get a clarification to the story if we get her to talk, as she is a living witness. Come now, let's listen to her.
Julia started to ramble on with tremendous vigor at Subaru, who had hazarded a guess at Reed's temperament from Shala's reaction. And to make matters worse, he had handled things by dismissing Subaru, who had attempted to defend his own point with a laugh. After so long, Subaru could once again see a glimpse of the figure of that gaudy knight he had witnessed at the onset of the royal selection. He now knew that his attitude back then had been down to him playing the villain, though whenever he saw him like this, he's sure to get the impression that he still was a bit of a villain, much like when they first met. In any case.
Your impressions regarding the first Sword Saint raid Astrea. Miss Shala, I would like you to tell us your candid impression of him.
He was human garbage.
I would like you to tell us your candid impression of him.
Don't pretend like she didn't say anything!
Subaru shoved Julius's shoulder, who had tried to ignore that inconvenient tidbit, and made him face the facts. Pointing his finger at Shala, who had a troubled look on her face, Subaru continued.
Hey, listen up. The truth about the history you wanted to know about is right here. She's a living witness to it. Go on. Tell me as many anecdotes about Reed Astrea as you like, of that magnanimous man of character, skilled in the sword.
Those who hold exceptional talent end up having confidence in themselves, more or less. That should not be chastised. Rather, it should be something you take pride in. If you end up becoming the greatest swordsman recorded in history, even acting as such is... Yeah, when you take into account how things were back then, it would be suitable...
It's the first time I've seen you so desperate.
Julius, too, became flustered, as if he were considering just how unconvincing he sounded. Setting Julius aside, who had been betrayed by the history which he ever so loved, Shala's truth of Reed Astrea was pouring out of her without an end in sight.
Well, anyway, he was a nasty guy. His personality was that of an unruly brat in adult form. And he loved to bully the weak, Or I guess if we look at that from a garbage point of view, almost all of his opponents were weak. So he'd bully the weak no matter what he fought against. He did that a lot to me too. But he was able to keep doing that to you even though you're so strong? Since it happened over 400 years ago, you must have still been small too. I've been like this ever since I was born. So between now and back then, I've not changed, however. I've not changed. However, that thing was just out of the ordinary. A total piece of shit.
Garbage, piece of shit. The hero of yore had been harshly evaluated as such. The darkness was not vanishing from Shala's attitude, as if many hateful memories had come flooding back to her. It was the same as when a person who had been bullied recalled what the bully had done to them.
You should always keep that piece of shit in mind. Even if the bully forgets, the one bullied absolutely never will, and that's a fact.
I'm not really surprised since there's a precedent in Reinhard, but it'd take quite a monster to knock you down a few pegs. And Reed Estrella's one too.
He really was the worst. But I was able to get him to use both hands once every 10 times we fought.
I see.
He could only answer with that. Had she set her goals high or low in making him use both of his hands once every 10 times, and not to gain victory once every 10 times? Super felt like he would not be able to make Reinhard use both his hands even once every 100 times, so he could admit that her putting up a fight like that had been plenty enough.
Well, we can put off asking about Reed. It's pretty pointless for us to ask if you didn't destroy him.
I agree. There's other things we ought to prioritize right now.
Didn't you waste your time doing that just now?
Not tell whether he had a scholarly interest in it or a curiosity spurred from a simple hobby, but he judged that, for now, perhaps Julius would not be of any use. Although he felt sorry for Julius, who had gotten his illusion shattered, unfortunately for him, Super had no reason to care about Reinhard's ancestor right now. To begin with, Reinhard himself was already more than plenty enough amazing, no matter how amazing his bloodline was. At least considering his father's nature, he was sure that Reinhard was much better off.
Then, let's leave all speculation about who the hero is to the guy who knows best.
Gotcha. I shall humbly accept.
I still wasn't talking about you, but sure, go for it. Bayako! Desute kunasai!
Gotcha, in fact. He left the test to Julius since he was motivated to do it, and getting Beatrice to assist him as a helper, who boasted 400 years of knowledge, was ideal.
Then what shall we do?
We'll take a closer look at the surroundings.
He would leave the hero-related stuff to Julius and Beatrice, who would remain by Shala, and he wanted to take a look at the arrangement issue in the meantime. Namely, how the replicated monoliths were arranged. If there was some significance to their uneven arrangement, then taking the time to search for the pattern behind it probably would not be a waste.
First of all, the first one is in front of the stairs.
It's the monolith that hands out the questions, right?
The monoliths were not lined up in a narrow enough space to the extent that they had to be careful not to bump into them. Nevertheless, Super took Anastasia and Amelia and looked around the monoliths inside the room. There was a surprising difference in size between the scattered monoliths on second look. However, there was not a single one of them that was as large as the series of original monoliths. The figures of countless monoliths, which were 1 or 2 times smaller, were scattered about.
At first glance, I guess there's about 7 or 8 monoliths that are about the same size as the first monolith?
I guess so. Yeah, I think so too. I think the ones that are really far away are all quite small. We'll end up restarting things if we touch those, though.
From the way you're talking about it, it looks like you've done that before. Sorry, never mind about that.
Seeing sadness build up in Amelia's eyes, Super caught himself before he said too much. Returning back in front of the first monolith,
Subaru turned to face the two girls and plunged into thought.
Touch the brightest of the hero destroyed by Shawla. I feel like it's trying to say something cool.
I guess it must be saying something abstract. Unfortunately, we can't overlook the question when we have to take into account it comes from what we're relying on Shala-san's memory.
Well, I suppose so.
Although it was labeled as an examination, in reality, the path to the answer depended on relying on others. But it would be unfair to rely on someone who had been originally assigned to be the tower's keeper. Subaru and the others had not expected friendly contact upon making it to the tower. However, they ended up arriving without coming to blows with Shala. If it had not ended up like that, they would have fallen into a quagmire of massacre. Even if they had successfully made it into the tower in that case, they likely would not have been able to defeat Shala.
If we do that, passing the examination is going to be forever impossible, right?
That's correct if you're saying that they have no intention of letting us solve the examination. They could put a strong guardian as a defense mechanism, and worse, were we to kill said guardian, they could put a terrible barrier that would not let us pass.
But, Subaru, you don't think that. You think it's different to that?
Mm-hmm.
Emilia turned her eyes in anticipation towards Subaru, who had touched on the issue of security. Receiving her gaze, Subaru confirmed her thoughts with a chuckle. Those eyes were Subaru's weakness. Subaru grew weak whenever Emilia and Beatrice gave him those looks. Rem, Garfield, and Otto would occasionally look at him like that too. Coupled with Petra, that made far too many. The only ones who did not regard him in such a way were Patrache and Ram.
It somehow feels like I could see a trend.
Hmm?
It's nothing. Just talking to myself.
Subaru's bluff would not have worked against those who could see through him. Of course, he was bailed out thanks to Emilia not being one of those who would question him about it. Anyways, putting that aside and going back to the problem of the format of the examination.
Exceptions aside, fundamentally, the problem was constructed with the assumption that it can be solved. If they really wanted to hide things properly, it'd be smarter not to leave them somewhere where there's a chance of finding them.
But, Natsuki-kun, you've eyeballed this place as not being like that.
What was it that the keeper of this place, Shawla, said? She said this is a great library where you can get all knowledge you desire. I don't think Shawla herself could come up with such a fancy-looking phrase. So, I think she's spurging out words that were told to her by someone else. Meaning, that Flugel who built this library and entrusted it to Shawla intended for it to be used.
The more he unraveled the possibilities, the more unnatural the current situation became to him. The creator of this great library Pleiades must have taken steps to set it up so that the building fulfilled its purpose. For that reason, he had left behind the examinations and Shala here as a means to screen people.
Does this mean that no one but those who get along well with Shawla can use it to begin with?
But Shala said that she attacked everyone who approached the tower, right?
Yeah, that was right. The command that had been given to Shala was to eliminate anyone who approached the tower without any exceptions. And Subaru and the others coming into friendly contact with Shala had just been a stroke of luck. If he recklessly concluded that people would not get the qualifications to challenge the tower unless they abounded in fortuity, then...
So what you need is strength, luck, and charm. So you're able to make friends with Shala-san? I think our line is pretty unfit for that challenge.
It sure is.
Had they been defeated by Shala, killed by her, or been unable to get her to cooperate with them, then they would have lost the qualifications to challenge the Great Library Pleiades. Although it was irrational to think so, if he listed all the conditions up till now, he could only come to that conclusion. However, Super could not help but have a bad feeling in just accepting that. And then...
Hey!
Emilia?
I'm feeling really uneasy. I got a real bad feeling in and around my chest.
Amelia placed her hand to the pit of her stomach and anxiously spilled that out. As he was about to draw his eyes to that, Subaru restrained himself before he ogled her pale skin. Clearing his throat, he frowned at Amelia and said,
A bad feeling? Huh. Is something on your mind?
To tell you the truth, there is. But this may have nothing to do with everything. And even if I say it out loud, I think only you would understand me.
I think I'd like you to say whatever's on your mind right now, so you can say it to me. My thoughts aren't necessarily correct, and it's honestly a good thing to think about things from multiple different angles.
Really?
Having been immersed in her thoughts about what she was holding back, Amelia's face brightened a little as she heard his words. Then she continued speaking, saying,
When you touch the monolith, you guys could hear a voice inside of your head, right? Yeah, it's an uncanny contraption, but I wonder what the heck it is. And that voice, isn't it similar to the one back at the Sanctuary's trials?
Subaru and Anastasia both kept their silence when they heard Amelia's suggestion. However, even if both of them had ended up staying silent, the reason why they had done so was different. Anastasia had plunged into silence because she had no clue what those words meant, but Subaru's silence had been because he had been taken by surprise, and because he understood her words. The trials. Those had taken place at the tomb of the witch Echidna, an existence present in the sanctuary. Those mystifying phenomena that made one confront their past and confront differing presents. Subaru could not know the full details as he retired halfway through, but according to Echidna back at the tomb, there had been a third trial too, which Amelia had overcome. No, the details and hardships of those trials were not what was important here. What was important was that refrain, which had informed them about the details of the examination using their own voice, was pretty much the same as when they had challenged the trials.
Now that you mention it, you're right. Why did that slip out of my mind? I guess because they're bad memories?
Subaru, that's because you're really just like Echidna, no?
Once you go through an experience where a savior turns out to actually be the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, you'll be like me too!
Ever since Sanctuary, Amelia and Subaru had spoken about the witches only once or twice. Once he touched on the subject of the trials, Amelia preferred to skirt around it, so he had not pursued the topic too much. The point that they both shared in common was that they thought, Echidna is an ill-natured fiend. Amelia sugarcoated it more when speaking, but Subaru spoke about her as it was.
Why, you freaked me out because you mentioned Echidna's name. Ah, I see. Anastasia's spirit is called Echidna too. She does speak in a really similar manner, right? 'Tis strange.
Yeah, it's strange, but let's settle this another time, alright? So, it's similar to the trial.
When he'd heard the word examination mentioned, he had thought it similar to trial, with even the way they began as a part that resembled the trials. Probably one part of the system, or perhaps a great part of it, resembled the one at the tomb.
Come to think of it, the trials too were practically unlimited in how much you could challenge them.
And what's more about the examinations? There's the third, the second, and the first floor, totaling 3 here too, right?
Subaru and Amelia looked at each other as if they were saying, yeah, it's definitely like that. The sage's name, and a period of time of 400 years. Looking back on it, it felt inevitable that history, with that epoch of those witches, overlapped with it.
Yeah, I'm sorry though. Even if we know that much, it still doesn't bring us any closer to the answer, huh?
Having thought all the way up to there, Amelia cut her story short with a flustered look on her face. Just as Amelia had concluded, even if there was a chance that this place had some relationship to the tomb, it still had nothing to do with the examination of Tegeta. The name of the hero who was destroyed by Shala was still something that they had to rely on Shala for.
Actually, isn't it not like that?
Subaru?
If we presume this place is something that's supposed to be solvable, then it can't be captured unless we deal with Shala. Then there's a mistake here in the first place.
This was the Tower of the Sage, and that had been the Tomb of the Witch. Both of these examiners shared in the same wicked disposition, but if that wasn't only what they had in common, they had a conceivable chance to overcome them. The witch had tested people out in her trials, but she did not present them any hardships that could not produce results. Then, if the sage tested people in his examinations, then he should not give them any hardships that could not produce results.
A chance for us to be able to capture the tower without needing Shala.
Natsuki-kun, what did you think of? Shh.
Plunging into his thoughts, Subaru placed his hand on his chin, closed one of his eyes, and sunk into speculation. As he did so, Amelia waved her hand and silenced Anastasia, who had seen a ray of hope glimmering in what was occurring and spoken up. Amelia put her finger to her lips and made a shushing gesture at her, telling her to stay quiet. And after that, she turned her head back to look at Subaru. Her amethyst eyes sparkled with anticipation. Not taking any notice of Amelia's anticipation, Subaru's head spun in thought. In this examination, Shala's presence was not important. Perhaps there was even a chance that those challenging the tower would destroy Shala were she to attack them. If he presumed that they still did not even know Shala's name.
Even if we didn't know that Shala is Shala, if we assume a Shala was involved, we mistakenly believed that Flugel's achievement had been Shala's. The sage's achievement was that he sealed the witch with the help of the first sword saint and the divine dragon. However, the Witch of Envy isn't something that we'd ever call something like a hero, nor was she ever destroyed.
He cut out that possibility as being an incorrect hypothesis right here. Maybe there'd been another heroic tale which the sage Flugel had pushed onto Shala that he just was unaware of. However, it did not make any sense that Beatrice and Julius would not recall something like that. An inevitable possibility floated up in his mind.
Even if we didn't know that Shala is Shala, if we assume a Shala was involved, that's it!
He once again repeated what he had said. That didn't mean his thoughts were going around in circles. It was the opposite. He'd cut out one of the possibilities, and another one had surfaced. And what that meant was...
Bayako! Come here for a sec!
Following the possibility that struck him, Subaru lifted his face up and called Beatrice over. Julius was trying everything he could to try and pry open the lid on Shala's memories. Next to him, Beatrice sprung up upon hearing Subaru's voice that indicated he managed to find something. She rushed over to him and said, "That face is Betty's favorite Subaru face, I suppose."
Shouldn't all of them be your favorite?
This one especially, in fact. Beatrice said that without any traces of embarrassment to her, and Subaru stretched out his hand over to her as she stood in front of him. Beatrice took his hand and looked at him with her round blue eyes. Her eyes were asking, "What do you want me to do?" Thus Subaru nodded and said,
It's quite simple. I'd like to jump a bit higher with my rock.
"Don't tell me you're going to say you've given up, so you want to break the ceiling and go up that way, I suppose."
Don't be so shocked. Of course not. I just want to look down on the monoliths from above.
Look down on the monoliths?
Behind him, Amelia turned around to look at the monoliths and muttered that out. Even if she was not cognizant of what he expected to get from it, Beatrice showed no intent of wanting to ask anything beyond that. She let out a small sigh and gripped his hand more tightly. "Marak, in fact." Pale, light purple waves faintly wrapped themselves around Subaru's body following her incantation. Marok was magic which kept the effects of gravity at bay and made a person far more agile. Just by jumping lightly, he would be able to float up by about 1 meter. And if he kicked off from the floor with all his strength, then...
Up we go!
Still holding Beatrice's hand, Subaru leapt up towards the top of the tall room. Although he'd risen some 6 or 7 meters, his body did not crash into the ceiling as he had expected. The layer had expanded as if there had been no ceiling at all inside of this endless white expanse. Thus, Subaru was able to look down on the entire room from above.
It's as I thought.
Were you able to find what you were looking for, I suppose?
Of course. This place is the absolute worst.
Subaru frowned and nodded, seeing Beatrice's gaze, who had heard his mutter wrapped inside of his arms. The two of them turned towards the ground and dropped down. Their lightness of body that had helped them leap up also helped grace their landing. They landed without any issue, and he lowered Beatrice, who he had been princess carrying, down to the floor.
I know the name of the hero.
Really?
Subaru said that with conviction to Amelia, who had seen him muse about it and then leap up. Amelia reacted in surprise to his words, and Anastasia rounded her eyes as well. Hearing them speak, Julius and the others with him had been captivated by their talk and gathered over to where Subaru and the others were.
Oni-san figured it out?
I solved it, along with the line of thinking of this errant examiner. For now.
That's master for you! You're making me feel all tingly. Oh, how I yearned for this!
With Maylee on her back, Shala gave him a thumbs up and replied. Then she shook her head vigorously. Looking at that from the corner of his eye, Julius looked over to the group of monoliths and said,
I do not mean to doubt you right now, but please, tell me how you managed to get the answer.
It's nothing spectacular. Y'all needn't feel bad for not solving this, because, in the first place, the people who have a chance at solving this are few.
This problem was the most contemptible in that sense. The challengers had to overcome the obstacle that was Shala, understand the details of the problem, and yet, from the start, they had been narrowed down by the likelihood of knowing the answer to the problem.
The hero destroyed by Shala. Their name is Orion.
Orion?
Everyone looked at Shala in confusion after they heard the word that Subaru had spoken out. However, Shala vigorously shook her head as everyone's gazes converged on her and said,
I don't know them. Nope. I've got no idea who that is. And even for a sec we assumed I did kill them. What sort of person who can even make it all the way here gets called a hero? It's totally ridiculous. So, I don't think I'm the one to blame here. How, you may ask? Well, by this argument from theory, I'm super smart.
As you can see, this woman's not smart at all. At first, I'd suspected that she might have actually forgotten, but that's not the case. Reason being that the Shala from this problem isn't this woman in the first place.
Huh? I'm the only Shala. I got this name from Master.
Even the name that your master gave you came from someone else.
He prodded out his finger to the tip of the protesting Shala's nose and pushed her away before she could get closer. Following that, Subaru walked over to the original monolith and stood in front of it.
Maybe once again, only Subaru knows the origins of Shala's name.
It isn't just me who knows, though I suppose not everyone would know. The name of a star in my hometown is called Shala. The meaning of its name is the Stinger. But if I had to specify which kind of stinger, then it'd be the Scorpion Stinger.
Shala had insisted on calling her hairstyle a scorpion tail. Had that been a hint of some sorts? Or was that some natural airheadedness of Shala's? Whichever one it was, there'd been a few things that had made him recall that Shala was equal to Scorpion was equal to Stinger.
According to legend, the hero Orion was stung by a scorpion which had been sent out to besiege him, due to his boastfulness. And he ended up dying. After his death, he became a star. So, the scorpion that killed Orion also became a star due to its deed. And it's said that even now in the sky, Orion lives in fear of the scorpion.
You've explained things? This legend has a pretty depressing vibe to it too, in fact.
Anyways, think of it as having constellations where stars are illustrated by the figures of animals and people as such. You can even think of them as an asterism. So, that's how it looks when you look down on the monoliths from above.
Becoming practically weightless as a result of Beatrice's magic, he jumped up and looked down at the group of monoliths. The scattered black monoliths in this world of white. Although the colors were inverted, a series of black stars floated about in this white world, forming a pattern which he was familiar with. There were 8 monoliths in total, which had the same size as the original one. The number of major stars, as well as how they were laid out, both matched with how the constellation of Orion was shaped. And when he linked it to the last part, touched the brightest.
The original monolith is right in the middle. Well, I just got to keep my eye on Alanam, and if I keep following the shape of the constellation, if I keep following Orion, then... The phrasing the brightest is a bit of a roguish expression. In actual fact, stars shine in various ways. Sometimes they're always bright, other times they shine brighter only ever so often. Considering that, there are 2 stars that fit the bill for the brightest in Orion.
When viewed from above, the 2 stars that fit the bill were the right shoulder of Orion, located in the upper left part, Betelgeuse, and Orion's left knee located in the lower right part, Rigel. Rigel was always invariably bright, whereas Betelgeuse was a variable star that sometimes shone brighter than Rigel. Solving the problem by picking both of them was not a pretty solution, but...
I guess I'll go for Rigel.
He had bad memories of a name similar to Betelgeuse. Setting his answer in stone, Subaru touched the monolith on Orion's left knee, Rigel. This was not necessarily the only answer, but most likely it should be the right one. And at the same time he realized that, he readied himself for the precipitousness and difficulty of the obstacles that awaited them on the 2nd and 1st floor, when considering the maliciousness of the person who had cooked up these examinations.
Huh?
The white room was filled with a dazzling light. Both sound and landscape were left behind. Everything was blown away before finally...
Whoa!
When the light died down, Subaru and the others were left standing in a room made out of stone, in the middle of a room that was encompassed by countless bookshelves.
Yay!
The end.
I sincerely apologize for that.
Amazing.
I read the line.
Wi-Fi
I was
got
like,
us a
wait, why
guide.
is no one continuing? And then I was like, okay, I'll say it again. Maybe I just did it on mute. And then I turned to my Wi-Fi bar and I go, oh.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Thank you for
Fuck.
you fixed that so fast. I did one Julius line. It was atrocious, but thank you for coming back so fast.
What are you talking about? It was amazing.
It was amazing.
No one was jumping in who was here, so I was like, oh shit. Okay, I'll do it.
Oh,
I was about to if you hadn't done it. I was like, should I go for it? Should I go for it?
Yeah.
But then you beat me to it. I was like,
ended
okay.
up not being able to do Julius as tweaking out as possible because I was just that confused. On what was happening. I was like, oh, fuck.
It's like, wait, what?
This is one of my
What's my
favorite.
Wi-Fi doing?
It's one of my favorite chapters in Arc 6, which I know is kind of strange, but I was just so hyped, especially after reading Remith, to like hear Rigel's name and Beetlejuice and like Orion and all the stars come back together. So
Yeah.
this is one of my faves.
How
Subaru gets to actually figure something out again.
Yay!
How was Subaru is in Death Note for like 20 minutes chapter, guys?
It was awesome.
But actually,
Amazing.
It's actually very fun to play the pondering Subaru, like the Thinker's Man. It's really interesting to see that side of him when he's such a goof most of the time. I take a potato chip
Actually,
and I eat it.
lock the fuck in.
Eat it.
Born to dilly dally. forced to lock in the life of Natsuki Subaru.
It's also
Oh,
just
man.
like you can tell how frustrated Subaru is that the person that set up this exam was like, yeah, the only one who can complete this is people from Earth. Fuck you.
Also, people who know constellations.
Yeah, you have to
Fuck
also know constellations from Earth sky to be able to do this too.
Yeah, because like the average person, like sure might get like Shala Orion if they had known about some legends, but they're not getting the fact that like they're not getting the entire constellation of Orion just off of memory like Subaru did.
Yeah. Subaru's knowledge of the stars once again comes in handy. It's so funny too in that in the Memory Snow OVA too, when he's explaining to Beatrice,
yeah.
look, these are where the stars are, and she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Those stars aren't there, in
What are
fact.
you talking about?
And he's like, wait, it's a different sky! No!
Yeah. And then it comes back. It finally comes back into play all the way, what, 2 arcs later?
Yep,
3
pretty
arcs
much.
later, even.
But it's it's always interesting too. Like whatever's like the subtextual stuff is going on with the stars and the story is really interesting. It kind of like it's so multi-layered in that how much does it actually affect the story and how much is it just Subaru's knowledge helping him figure certain things out just because someone else named certain characters a certain way for this specific reason, you know?
Whenever I think of stars, I can only think of the fucking Arc 5 title, man. Like, the stars in Engraved History, sure, right?
Yeah.
Sure, right. Like, sure, all the Sonari spaceships. But then everything else that's star named is just like, What do you mean you engrave history?
It's it's interesting. I mean, there's multiple times throughout the story where Teppei talks about uniting and stuff like that, which is also the meaning of Subaru as a name. Because his name refers to a whole, like, star cluster, not just a single star.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I see that as what, like, Amelia's camp is, essentially, right? Like, they're gathering the stars necessary.
Yeah, and stars, like, can, in a way, symbolize, like, things that, as Arc 5 says, make history, like, very important figures that, like, shine above the rest. But I don't think Subaru has realized that he is also one of those stars, so...
Oh, yeah, he is. He doesn't value himself enough. But value yourself!
Love yourself, man! Just love yourself!
Love yourself, dude! Like, come on, man!
But it's, just being like, man, Betelgeuse sucks. I'm gonna choose Rigor. Makes more sense. And him being right in that is so funny. I'm gonna choose consistency, you know? Fuck you, Geese. Wanker.
Fuck you, Geese.
You made Rem play Twister. Now I'm not gonna choose you in my text adventure game. Fuck you.
You licked my eyeball.
Huh?
Oh, Geese. The guy, I miss him. Can we get another Shadowrun scene? Can we get him shit on Subaru again?
I wish that Subaru could have met nice pre-Crazy Geese. That would be a wholesome interaction between two guys. Like, it'd be like, yo, hey, they would get along well. And then there's Betelgeuse with Schizophrenia edition.
Betelgeuse. It's like, hey, I'm Betelgeuse versus.
I should say specifically geese without geese with non-medicated schizophrenia.
Yeah, no, he's off his meds. He needs to take his normal pills.
Yeah.
And he's like the 1% too. Apparently, most people with schizophrenia are actually pretty harmless.
Yeah.
Random factoid.
Random factoid.
It's just so strange. Like, very hyper-specific stuff. And it adds that element of Subaru being like, wow, like, seriously? This guy set it up this way? So literally no one apart from, like, me and maybe Al could do this?
Yeah, Al. Like, that's it. That's the only people in the world right now who could possibly pass this. Other than maybe, like, a kid, nah. Technically, because she saw his memories, but...
Maybe.
I don't think that was, like, the intent. I really don't think that was... It was probably just for Subaru.
But it then just kind of adds the question of what is the importance of Earth's like night sky and stars in relation to this world?
Yeah.
Like why are those important to here? And that's where you get
There's
into
also,
loads of
like-
fun theories, like is it a pocket dimension?
Yeah.
Like is it a dream
Are we
dimension?
in a
Stuff
parallel
like that.
world?
You're
Are we
like,
just
what's
really far
going on
away?
here?
Yeah.
Or is it just no? This is actually my personal favorite theory, which is that it's an actual real place, but like elements from Earth keep on interfering in it. Like basically like alien colonization in a way, not in the exact same way, but like in how it influences the world and like messes it up.
Yeah, it's like a sort of like diffusion in, where stuff from the Earth kind of like seeps in like flotsam. Okay. I mean, it's also like really, because the star names too. If you think about it, like all the Sin Archbishops now have star names, right? But the witches didn't. So
They
what's going on
have
there?
satellite
Right?
names. Like their names are
exactly.
also satellites. So there is a difference there.
Yeah, and it's like, why does that in specific matter? Like,
I would argue it's likely because of Pandora. I think she is twisting these people to fit a specific role that these stars could assign them, basically. And that's also why it's important that Betelgeuse is not Betelgeuse. Like, there's a misspelling, and it's on
he's
purpose.
separate.
Yeah.
Because we know for other archbishops, they just were born with those names.
Some of them were born with them. So, like, I
Some
can't
of
tell if
them,
they were
actually.
given them themselves, right? Because,
That's true.
like, for instance, Capella is a great
Capella
example.
is-
Like,
we
her
still
name
don't
was
know
supposed to
anything
be
about her, so-
Emeralda Lagunica, supposedly. There was no
Yeah,
Capella there.
supposedly.
Wilhelm notices that that's a new thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it adds a lot of questions of why does this keep popping up? Why is this relevant? That I want the audience to think about at home.
With the limited information we have now.
Yes.
Because we get more later on, but...
We do. This is a great time for a reminder as well. When we are watching and listening to these readings, if there's anything you may have missed in past streams, please do not ask in the chat because it's an Arc 6 spoiler-friendly zone. So anything we've seen on our channel is fair game. But if we have not seen it yet, try not to ask. If you have questions, you can always come into our Discord and go to the ReZero readings. And you can always spoiler tag and just ask, hey, did this happen yet? And someone will answer for you. And then you avoid spoilers. Because even though we do delete comments, and it does happen, and that's okay, it does stay on the VOD. So I try not to draw too much attention, because I don't want people to notice it on the screen. But just to be aware of that moving forward. Thankfully, it wasn't like the biggest thing ever. But we've had a couple over the past few weeks, so I thought I'd bring it up now. Fun little facts for everybody, especially if you're new to us for our readings. We usually do the same thing for every single reading.
Yeah, if you don't abide by that rule, you end up like me. You get thrown in the basement.
Into the basement.
Banished.
Some people want
Down
that,
the
though.
stairs.
Oh, true.
Wait, some people like being in the basement?
Some people want to be in our basement for some reason.
Oh, God. No thanks.
Weirdo.
Oh my.
I mean, Pat stayed here before. He says it's nice.
Yeah, I think that was him. I think that was him being nice.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, no worries.
No, I'm sure he felt that it was truly a good basement.
Good. There's carpet. It's nice.
And a basement of all time.
I nap here all the time. Mostly because I could sleep anywhere.
Basement of all time. John Basement.
John Basement.
Oh my goodness. Well,
It's just like Subaru's John ReZero as well as
John
Ryan.
ReZero. It's like whenever you load up a Bloodborne or Dark Souls character and you're just like, what should their name be? Oh, yes, I know, John Bloodborne.
John Dark Souls. Yeah, John Bloodborne.
Connor, we
There's
will
two
Oh,
throw
John
you out
ReZeros
there.
though, so it has to be John and Jimmy ReZero.
John and Jimmy.
The question is who's John and who's Jimmy between Subaru and Reinhardt.
John ReZero Jr.
John Rizuru Jr. Then it was just Junior and Senior.
Isn't there a ground dragon named Joseph?
Yes.
I
Goes
think
with
so.
them.
Wasn't that the one that was to Gyan? Or
Oh, maybe.
Gyan changed to Joseph? It was...
Damn, that's
It might
actually
it might have
joke.
been Gyan changed because I think Teppei realised it was a reference that wouldn't make sense in the world to have.
Ah. He put the ground dragon in front with the cart in front of the ground dragon metaphorically.
Yeah, he did. He got ahead of himself there.
Put the cart
Yeah,
before the
yeah.
ground
It's
dragon.
it was Gyan. Joseph.
Oh, question for
Yeah, it's
those
because of the
you here.
Doraemon reference.
Our Witch of Pride, that is Typhon, correct?
Yes.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a
Randomly
little
comes up. Yeah.
question. Thank you, thank you. All right, without further ado, does anyone want to talk about anything else? Otherwise, it might be a good point to wrap up. We've almost hit 3 hours. For you
Yeah,
guys.
this one's getting long, eh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going.
It's time for us to finally take a break. Thank you, everybody, for being here this
One
week.
thing.
We're going to see you on Wednesday. The podcast will be released as soon as possible. I will get on editing it right away, and we'll just have a random upload of that. We're going to have our Arc 6 podcast uploaded next Friday. Of course, members will get that early. If you haven't auditioned yet, please go audition. I've posted the link. I pinned it for us here. Keep auditioning. We are still looking for femme voices, so if you have a femme voice or can do one, please, audition away. And we will see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.